Being a single mom and doing it all by yourself is brutal. Learn the brain and energy tools to get back to your center and overcome your challenges. Welcome to Single Moms Doing It All. Today, I have an episode that I'm really excited about, and you'll understand why. Dallisa Hocking, a fifth generation psychic medium. So now you understand why I'm so excited about this episode. Hi, Dallisa, how are you?
Hello, thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm really excited to get into the interview today.
I saw you on some interview somewhere. I don't remember where, but I was like, oh, I need to have her. Oh, that was on the app we connected on. But I saw some of your interviews and it sounds really interesting.
Oh, it definitely is. It's not what I thought I'd be doing for a living, but it's definitely what the universe had in store for me. You know, you have to remember that there's divine timing and the universe needs you different places for different reasons. And it all came together quite beautifully. But yeah, I do a lot of media. I do a lot of interviews. And so it's no surprise that you've caught some of those, which makes it a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've seen that. So like you, my purpose ran after me and made sure I was paying attention. And I would like to know how it happened for you. You're also from a family of psychics and mediums, but how did this concretize to you doing that today for a living?
Right. Great question, because I owned different companies. I've been a serial entrepreneur. I worked in Las Vegas casino industry. I was an executive when I left there. And I've worked at a business school in Texas. So I've got different things sprinkled in there. And my grandmother would tell me stories about seeing ghosts and apparitions in her house. She would always call it her ESP, her downloads, her psychic gifts that she would have. And she would tell me as a little girl, you know, things that she felt were going to be happening and what she saw for me as I got older in life and things have started to come true that she's predicted. But as she was starting to make her transition to the other side, which was about 5 years ago, I was living in Texas and working at the business school, and I owned a dating and matchmaking company at that time. And I heard about a workshop up in New York at the Omega Institute, which is kind of out in the middle of the woods.
Yeah.
And it was I love the Omega Institute. And so I found out that there was a workshop on synchronicity, which is the study of how nothing is an accident. And I thought, well, how fun would that be? And so at pretty much the last minute, I packed my bags, I flew up to New York, and all of these things started happening that were very synchronistic on the trip. And I just had this feeling that there was something special about my time in New York. And it just so happened that I knew somebody that had a second home that was right next to the Omega Institute. And he said, hey, why don't you come and stay with me and we can catch up and all this stuff. And I said, that would be great. So the last night of my trip, after all of these like magical things were happening on the trip, we were at his house and he gets a phone call and they had told him that his aunt, who he was very close with, had unexpectedly just passed away. She had fallen down a flight of stairs and unfortunately passed away. I didn't know her. I didn't have any connection. He was really the only one that I knew. I didn't know the family or anything. So I give him my condolences. You know, I go off to the guest bedroom. He goes upstairs and I go to bed. And I don't even like really give it another thought, truthfully. And during my sleep that night, she ends up coming through, his aunt. And she said, please do me a favor and tell my nephew I made it to the other side and I'm okay. And I could see what she looked like. And I thought, oh my goodness gracious. So I woke up the next morning and I go out to the kitchen and I said to my dear friend, Peter, I'm like, listen, I got to tell you this. And so I give him the message and I now realize this was like my very first test, but he turned to me and he said, well, that's interesting. Can you tell me what she looked like? And I described her and her facial features and what her hair looked like. And he's like, yeah, that's her. I said, okay. And it took me immediately back to, being the little girl in my grandmother's living room and remembering what she would tell me about the spirits that would come forward to her and what messages that she would receive. And I thought, this is something else, right? Like, I'd always kind of been intuitive, but not to the degree where spirits were delivering messages now. And so I flew back to Texas. I started testing it with volunteers, and it just started growing, and people started referring other people. And so in a matter of 5 years, it has gone from that trip to New York. And now not only am I a psychic medium working with clients, but I have students from around the country that are training to be psychics and mediums and wellness spiritual practitioners. But I have this connection to the other side that I know was divinely guided. And it's now this national company, Spirit and Spark, where I have these practitioners that work, from coast to coast with clients. So it's amazing that when you finally say, okay, fine, I'll accept the mission, that spirit in the universe starts lining things up for you. A lot of the times we just have to get out of our own way.
And that's so true. And because I'm not psychic. I have two of my kids, like I was telling you before we went on, who are psychic. They do card readings and they are even mediums. And for me as a mom, when one of them started to see deceased people in the middle of the night, first of all, she was very afraid. And my brother has some abilities, but we never really talked about it. And I never was raised with that kind of information. So for moms who have kids who start receiving messages like that, who can sometimes be very terrifying in the middle of the night, how could I, as a mom, if I'm not sure if my kid is psychic or medium, or if it's just the imagination, can differentiate the two to be able to support my kid, and if they have an ability to support that too?
Right, because oftentimes animals and kids see more than adults do, and they experience more. Their veil between us and them, they don't have all their walls and blocks and barriers up energetically. And so they are experiencing a lot. And I'd say, first of all, get curious, right? Like if your child's saying that they're experiencing something frightful or a little bit different, they're not sure what's happening or who's trying to come through to them, or their imaginary friend, is coming around, get curious, ask them questions, and not in a condescending way, but just really tell me more. What did you see? And come from a place of curiosity, because the more that you're open and the more that you can spark that curiosity and ask questions, the more likely they'll be to share with you. But if they think they've done something bad, they'll close down and they probably won't share things with you. And so create more of a two-way dialogue with them. Ask them the questions. Maybe they don't know how to put it into words just yet, but eventually they will, and they'll be able to explain what's happening or what it feels like. Maybe ask them, where is it showing up in your body? Is it making your heart race? Do you feel sick to your stomach? Do you feel excited? What's the emotion? And have them try to explain that. Because then once you start having that dialogue with them, then you can start introducing, intention or prayer at bedtime with different angels. Archangel Michael is the one that can send anything that's not in the highest and best interest of your family to go. So prayer or intention with Archangel Michael usually is really helpful. Incorporating salt into their bath is like, we're going to clean and cleanse your energy and dump some salt in their bath. But explain why. You don't have to get into all the nitty gritty details, but at least tell them why you're dumping salt in there so they can be a part of the process. And I've also found that putting different crystals next to their bed also helps them to feel a part of the process. So some of my recommendations would be, if it feels like a heavy energy or one that's maybe not that pleasant or it's being scary, anything black, like a black tourmaline, a black obsidian. Selenite also helps to clear energy in a room, and selenite's really inexpensive. So usually what I'll do is I'll take a chunk of selenite and I'll pair it with black tourmaline or black obsidian and actually set them together, because what happens is the black crystal will soak up things from their room, and the selenite is like a self-cleaning oven. So if you have them next to each other, the selenite will keep the other crystal clean so it can keep absorbing things from their room. So the two of them together usually works wonders.
Oh, great. And so you touched a little bit on how we perceive, because you talked about the body. I know that for me, when I coach, I definitely channel, but I feel it in my body. I feel what my client feels, and I hear stuff. But we all have a dominant way of receiving the messages. So could you talk a little bit about the ways and how we can identify that?
Right. I think most people usually have one or two primary psychic abilities. And I tell my psychic students, don't force the other ones, right? They may emerge or grow with time, but stick with what you're good at. Stick with what the universe gave you as your gifts. Some people are empathic. They'll walk into a room and they can tell who's happy, who's sad, and nobody has to say a word, but they're really taking on and feeling the energy of the auric fields around them, the people that are around them. So usually I find a lot of empathic people. But then you have gifts that would be like clairvoyance, which is seeing imagery and symbols. And it's like playing charades with the other side, right? They're showing you things and you're trying to figure out what the message is, but you see it. At least for me, it looks like a daydream, like a translucent vision that plays out before me. Where on the other hand, my grandmother would literally see with her human eyes the apparition walking across the room. So clairvoyance can vary a little bit with how your body processes the imagery. Clairaudience would be clear hearing. So when you hear words, phrases, I usually hear it through the right ear. But it sounds like a subtle version of my own voice. But I know the feeling energetically, what it feels like in my body when the words are coming through. Clairsentience, which is receiving messages in your physical body. So sometimes I'll get chills and goosebumps in different parts of the body, depending on, if it's a confirmation that's coming through. Yeah. I will also experience it with mediumship sometimes when the spirit comes forward. Some want to talk about it, some don't, but the way that they passed, they may want to bring that through my physical body so that I can describe to the client what's coming forward as a part of the confirmation that we have their loved one in spirit. But those are generally the most popular. Claircognizance is like a drop-in, like you just know what you know, what you know. And that's just a clear knowing. And I would say most people have one or two of those that would be prominent. And you can continue to build it. I think everyone has the ability to be a psychic. Mediumship's a different story, in my belief. I think people can do it with enough training, but it's like a muscle. You wouldn't expect an athlete in the NFL to just show up and score a touchdown without years and years of practice and dedication. And using and working with the frequencies of being a psychic and or being a medium, you really have to know what's being shown to you. It's your psychic dictionary. So unless you understand what the universe is bringing forward through you, you're only as good as your interpretation of the energy. So you have to learn through time and practice and validation that you understand what spirit is showing you.
And it's even true with dreams, because I know I have messages that come through in my dreams, but for me, I know what a snake means for me, which won't necessarily mean the same thing for someone else. So it's very personal too.
It is, because you're right. Different symbols are going to mean different things. Spirit's going to use what you know. And they're not going to necessarily show me a snake. They don't generally show me snakes, right? But they'll show me different things that I'll understand based off of my own life experiences. So you're absolutely correct. this is a two-way communication. So if you're practicing this and they show you something and you don't understand what they're showing you, just ask them. You know, I've said in the middle of sessions, I'm like, nope, didn't understand that. Show that to me a different way. And they'll show it to me a different way because they know that I'm being very verbal. And if I don't understand something, I'm going to ask them, because this is two-way. And I kind of see it like, you want me to help people, you got to help me too.
Yes. And I know that we used to play now they're teenagers and even older, but when my kids were younger, we used to play games when we had road trips about what color am I thinking of. Well, of course, my daughter was always beating everybody because she's clairvoyant, and that was very frustrating. But playing games like that, it's like what you said, training your mind to understand and receive. And it can be fun. It doesn't have to be heavy and scholastic, or I don't know, a way that scares people. So you are both psychic and medium. Did you have to train on being medium to be, well, you said you saw it without even training, but is it something that maybe you started when you were a kid? Like one of my kids used to have literally a mother and a son, or a mother and a daughter, sing her to sleep every night when she was 4. Did you see stuff as a little girl and then you stopped because that's not what you wanted to do? Or did it appear only at that friend's house when you went to Omega?
Yeah, great question. Because one often thinks that, oh, I must have been doing this my whole life. And when I was a kid, when I would sit with my grandmother, I was half curious to ask her questions and half terrified. Yeah. And I wasn't seeing anything, but the spirits knew, like, do not appear in front of me because I will freak out. Mm-hmm. And so I already knew at a very young age what I would accept, I would not accept in terms of how they showed themselves to me. So it really wasn't until 5 years ago when the woman showed up, but reflecting back on it, I was in a 3-day workshop where half of the time I was in meditation and I was connected with a group of 75 people. They were all very spiritually. So my vibration was so high that when she passed away, of course I could sense her, see her, and communicate with her because the frequency was so high. So that's what I mean about psychics and mediumship. Not all psychics are mediums. Yeah. And so your listeners that are wanting to tune into the other side, either a loved one, a friend, you medium specifically, because the frequency scale, I think psychics a little bit lower with the frequency. It's a little bit easier to pick that up, but we have to raise our frequency so much higher in order to communicate with anything on the other side, because in my opinion and experience, the people on the other side are having to morph their energy just to try and, get a message to us. And so the higher we can get up, the better chance we have of actually creating that connection. So I do think you can train to do mediumship, but you really have to train to get your frequency high enough. That's the secret. If you can do that, then I believe you can get messages. I think I was just very open-minded and had just come off of that workshop, and that was the doorway that opened that then piqued my curiosity. And then I just kept going. Because when I got back to Texas, I would go into meditations, and they were the same meditations I was doing during the workshop. They had the digital copies online, and I just started listening to them again. I'm like, if this happened once, this is going to happen again. And I intentionally went in with the mindset of, I'm going to try to replicate the energy that I experienced in the workshop through meditation and see if I can do this again. And then it just kept over and over. And then that's when, everything went into motion.
So in your experience, because I see things when I meditate, I see guides, they have messages with symbols that talk to me, like I said, personally. I don't see people who pass. Is it the same vibration and I'm just blocking it because I'm afraid? Or is it something else?
No, I think maybe going into your next meditation or when you want to do this and ask for a loved one to come forward. Sometimes before we go into meditation, if we sit for a moment and set our intention, tune into our hearts, and then go into the meditation, we often find that what we've asked for and intended for shows up for us. So one way to get us there a little bit quicker would be before the meditation, you could put your hands over your heart, and with your eyes closed and just focusing on your breath, you can pick one person. I wouldn't call everybody forward, so just practice with one. Set the intention that you want them to come forward, but what helps to unlock it is to think and feel a memory that you had with them before while they were alive.
Okay.
Because that energetic connection and calling forward that memory will oftentimes allow that energy to connect on that spiritual plane, which will then give you some kind of message or feeling that they're there. But the gratitude of the memory in the heart that you experienced with them usually works.
And that's the beauty of being able to do it on demand, because it happened to me twice in my life. Once it was my grandmother, and I know it's hard to explain in words because I felt her laughter. It's really strange. It's not that I heard it, I felt it in me. But that was random. I didn't generate that. She just came. But being able to do it on demand is way more powerful. For example, with my students and clients, we work on asking for guidance from our ancestors and guides, because as single moms, sometimes it's very difficult to know what to do. And I know that for myself and my family and some of my clients that I've seen, I call it co-parenting with the universe, because there are so many aspects of it. When you need a solution, an answer, anything, it always shows up. You just need to be open to the format. How can I train, or a mom who's not necessarily as strongly psychic as you are, train to sharpen that skill?
Right. I think meditation is the low-hanging fruit here. And, often people will say, I don't have time. I don't know how to do it. I always do it wrong. You can't really mess it up. And so my suggestion would be, even get your cell phone and set the timer for 2 minutes. And anybody can find 2 minutes in their day, and sit in a chair with your feet on the floor, with your timer going, and close your eyes, and literally for 2 minutes, just feel your breath. Feel your breath go in through your nose, out of your mouth. And if it's helpful, count your breath, because counting will usually keep your brain on track. And then after you do that a few times, then I think you can start to ask a question. So before you go into your timed breath, you can set whatever question you want to know. And it could be as simple as, what do I need to know today? And then go into your breath and just concentrate on that and notice the peace that comes over you. But with more and more practice, just by doing that simple technique, you'll start to sense things, you'll start to feel things, you'll start to see, out in life, repetitive numbers, or you'll be standing in line somewhere and the person that you needed a contact with will be standing in line behind you, and the universe will start, rearranging things to let you know that you're cared for and you're protected and that they've got your back. But usually that power of synchronicity, of everything just coming together, I've seen it's just an uptick when you're open to it, when you sit down and set that intention that you want it. And I think it has to do with free will, because we signed up to have a human experience. And they could come in and give us all the answers and make life really easy, but that's not what we signed up for. Earth School is one of the hardest schools you could be in. So congratulations, you're here, you're an advanced student. But they want us to ask them for when we really need the help and assistance, and then they can start bringing it in. But if you just go through life with blinders on, and you're suffering, or you're being victimized and fearful and in a scarcity mindset, you're going to keep getting the same thing. And so in order to start shifting the energy, you have to start doing things differently. And meditation 2 minutes a day will start to open up that window so that you can start getting the clarity that you're looking for.
And it's really a pity not to tap into that resource, because it's the most accurate, high vibrating of all. And it creates miracles. I literally, solutions fell on my laps. Situations where I needed information, I was guided where to go, who to see. It's amazing. It's really amazing. What do you see as the most common ways that people block themselves from receiving that guidance?
I think self-worth is one of the major blocks that I see in people. And I see it almost daily. People that think that they're not worthy of receiving information, they're not special enough to get it. I see it with all kinds of success in life. If they're not manifesting the job that they want, or the relationship they're in is not, suiting them. Oftentimes people stay in what they know, and it's a false sense of safety and security. And I feel like when people really, truly recognize their worth and they love themselves and like really love themselves, then, all kinds of abundance starts opening up, and anything then becomes possible. But I talked about this in my weekly energy forecast the other day, that we're kind of in this interesting fork in the road. So the pathway is here and everybody's on it, but the pathway is starting to split. And what they were showing me is, half of the pathway is people that are feeling prisoners within their own life, prisoners of their destiny, and then the other half are the pioneers. They're the phoenix rising. They're the group of people that say, no, I can get through anything. I'm going to figure this out. And they're the ones that are taking action for good, action within their own lives. They're manifesting their dreams, and they're manifesting really fast. But there are these two pathways. And so I think it's really important for people right now to ask themselves, are you the prisoner or are you the pioneer? Because you can't be both. It's kind of like, I use fear and faith all the time as examples in my work. You can't be fearful and faithful at the same time. So if you're in fear, it means that you're lacking trust that God, source, universe has your back. And so once you can identify where you're feeling that fear, then you can let it go, you can release it and heal it.
And it's really obvious right now in the world, everywhere we go. That's why in this podcast, I encourage people to be the light, because we need the light right now. And our job is to be a high vibrating, so that we can bring the people who mistakenly went on the other path to come back with us. Because I think, in my opinion, the future of us, humanity, the future of the planet depends on vibration right now. Where do you position yourself? What is your vision? Are you focusing on fear and all the mess that's going on, or are you focusing on light? It's really obvious. The challenge that I had in the beginning with my own intuition, and that I see in other people, is trusting what comes to you. Do you have any way to bypass that, or to make it more like easier for people who just start and need to trust a little bit more?
I think that, I don't know if it's a shortcut, but I think that validation is what makes you feel a little bit more empowered. Because if you receive information and then if it comes true for yourself, or if you're asking a friend, if you can pick up information for them and you start bringing it forward and they validate it, it just helps you build that psychic dictionary. So unfortunately, I don't think that there is a big shortcut, but I think getting out of your own way and trusting that what's coming forward is a message for you or for someone else, and then saying it out loud will help to validate that energy. Because if we keep it in and we're like, oh, maybe not, I don't know, it sounded like my voice, and you start doubting it, then they're not as welcoming with the information. So I think the more you're just like, hey, I'm going to give this a shot. I could be wrong, but it came through, so I'm going to trust it. Then that's going to be your quickest way. Rip the Band-Aid off. If you sit with it and you're kind of, oh, I'm not sure, and you're doubting, you'll just keep blocking it. So you have to say it out loud and validate it in order for that to move forward. And the more they know that you're willing to be a messenger of light, they'll just keep giving you more and more information. So get out of your own way. Most people, that's their biggest stumbling block, is they just doubt it, and they're afraid and they block it. But if they're like, hey, I'm gonna have fun with this. This is amazing that I have this ability. I'm gonna see what happens. Like, if that's your attitude about it, then you'll find that you'll have a lot of information and synchronicities that start coming forward. My other note I would say to that is, I'd be remiss if I didn't say this, that if you are going to start practicing with energy, set some kind of energetic boundary where you're only working with light and high frequency. Archangels, I work with a lot, because if you are open to working with energy, you have to state your boundaries. Otherwise, all kinds of stuff will start coming through, which is not necessarily going to be of the light. And Archangel Michael, again, would be the person, if you ever feel like something came in that doesn't feel of the light, then Archangel Michael is the one you can ask to remove it and push it back out to the universe. Because you don't want to necessarily be an open portal for everything. You only want to be an open portal for high vibration.
That's so true. I do Reiki on people, and I know that like you, I love archangels and angels. So Michael is a big one in my house. That reminds me of an anecdote when my son was young, and I had a tendency to forget stuff. And once I forgot the key on the door, and I live in a house, so it was the street. And I wasn't sure. And I said, okay, we have to go back because I don't know if I did it again. And my son was like, but I thought that the angels protected the house. I said, yeah, but tie your camel, pray and tie your camel anyway. You never know. So I had an energy session with a person, and I had a lower vibration attaching itself to me, because the lady didn't believe in, and that's my fault, I should have asked. She didn't believe in putting boundaries, because she believed that the positive energies were stronger than anything else. It put me in a bed for 3 days. So it's crucial. Thank you for reminding us of that. You talked about self-worth and self-love, and it's one of the pillars of my coaching, and it's one of the questions that I love asking my guests, because it's so broad and people don't usually know where to start, what to do. There are so many aspects to it. What is your definition of self-love?
Self-love for me is actually boundaries, because I feel like when I really love myself, I'm okay saying no. Yes. And it's when I don't feel that great about myself where I just let things slide. And that could even look like, reaching for the pint of ice cream, right? Where it's like, I've had a bad day and I'm just going to say yes to this because it's what I want to do. When really it's not probably best for me. So boundaries for me are a pretty good indication of my frame of mind and really the level of love that I have for myself.
So that's where you would start. In fact, if one wanted to work on self-worth, like when you see clients that don't receive what they're supposed to receive, or things don't come to them in life because of self-worth, that's where you would start, by setting boundaries, or is there something else that you tell them?
No, I think boundaries is one of the first places that I start, because you will attract what you are. And so if you're accepting everything, or you're accepting very little in exchange for your time or your energy, then you will continue to attract that until you burn out on that or you learn your lesson. We see it in love and relationships all the time. Somebody will accept so much less than what they deserve, because that is literally what they feel like they deserve on some level. And so it's about understanding, why have I said yes to that? And really healing that, because once you heal it and clear it, then your energy vibration will shift and you'll attract now the level that you're at now. So I think boundaries is one of the first things that people have to look at, and something that I continue to monitor within myself of, what am I going to say yes to? But I find myself saying no more and more often, just so the things that I say yes to, I can actually give more time and energy to.
And it's not even authentic if you say yes when you want to say no. Your relationships are not real. They're just your chameleon, like you're a people pleaser. I've seen that. I used to coach on dating, so I've seen that a lot with my clients and in my life, where I call it, because I'm French, accepting the crumbs instead of the full baguette. and that's really a big step up when you start saying no. It's a big thing. I had another question and I forgot it. Oh, bummer. Oh, yes, I remember. You know how people go to psychics for predicting the future. And what I've heard and what I've seen is that it's just a potential. And even though somebody can tell you something, if you change your energy, you will change the whole game. Do you have a lot of people that come to you for future stuff, and how do you make them understand that it depends on them?
Right, because I think that so much of this human experience that we signed up for is, free will, but I also think there are things that we've agreed to do, and destiny points, and relationships that are soul contracts. And so I think it's a mix between the two. I find that oftentimes the best sessions with clients are, yes, they can come to the table and ask questions about their future and what they should do. And I can look at the energy, but you're right. If they leave the session and they go make a completely different decision, it's going to shift what's going to be happening. But I do think it eventually brings you back to the destiny points that you agreed to do and the roles you agreed to play. So I think that there's a little bit of wiggle room in how you get there. I think the way that the energy is in the world right now, and what I've experienced from spirit, is there's just a lot of moving pieces going on right now. And so anybody that's listening that says, I want to go to a psychic and get an exact answer right now, I'd say proceed with caution. There's just too much going on right now on a global level, and with our own energy fields and in the collective consciousness, that instead of going to a psychic and asking, specific questions about your future, I would go to a really good life coach or somebody who's a psychic and a life coach and say, hey, here's what's going on right now. I'm sick and tired of this. How do I break free of it? What are you seeing for me that can help me, end this cycle that I've been on? That would be a better question, in my opinion, than should I take this job? Because I think where we're at right now, the energy is asking us to transform and to raise higher and to level up. And I would just go into a session asking questions that would help you to achieve that.
Because I know I've been contaminated with Hep B and I almost died from it. So I may have signed to be contaminated. I don't know if yes or no. And it's not even relevant. It doesn't matter for me, because my focus was then to make it so that it wasn't in vain, so that something higher would come out of it. And because of that experience, my faith and my dedication to working with the invisible world and who I really am, which is not that body, went up like 100 levels. So even though we sign up and we have soul contracts, our job is still to do the best with what we were given or what we agreed to ascend. So it's really important for a person, when they go to see you, for example, to also be open to get the spiritual lesson, not only the prediction.
Yeah, I don't do sessions without the lesson. I think, I don't want to say it's a waste, but I think if you're going to come to me, and I know others that have the same philosophy, we want to help you, and just giving you blanket information of questions you asked really isn't doing you a whole lot of service. So I would approach psychic readings very differently. But yeah, my clients don't get out of a session without, hey, here's the energy that's coming up for you. Here's the root cause. Here's why it's showing up again. Let's get rid of it. Because that's where I can be effective.
Have you seen success story after you gave them some guidance and they decided to change the vibration and something completely magnificent happened?
Oh yeah, regularly. And I mean, I can think of one person off the top of my head, and there was a lot of energy blocks around a pregnancy. And I explained what I was seeing and gave her something to do, an action item, and to help release that energy and then open up the door. And then she got pregnant just like that. I mean, I could see it all playing out, because I can ask them, hey, show me if they do this, is it going to work? And they'll show me if it's has the potential to turn the energy around. And so I always kind of look at this scenario, the imprint of the scenario as well, energetically. But yeah, the weekly energy forecasts that I do are really, they're channeled. But I get messages all the time that are like, I'm so glad you made that video. I felt like I was going crazy. I needed to hear that it wasn't just me. Yeah. Because as I mentioned, everything is moving so fast right now that people are feeling that split of the road of prisoner and pioneer. And it can often feel lonesome or isolating, especially with everything that's been happening with COVID. But it's actually intended, if you take that lesson and that learning, as you've talked about, if you take that, you would feel that you are propelling forward, because it's actually given you a lot of gifts this year around introspection and going inward and asking what's working for me and what's not. What have I not looked at or changed that's overdue? And yes, it may feel like bumps in the road. It may feel like people falling out of your life, but it's intended, if you chose to take it as the lesson, to really get you to that higher frequency. But unfortunately, not everybody sees it that way. Yeah. And so it's caused a lot of volatility in the energy.
What do you do personally to protect yourself, or still like not having the energy of the world affecting you too much lately?
Yes, because it can feel very heavy. And so I often ask, is this my energy or is it the collective's energy?
Yeah.
Because sometimes we can fall into the illusion that it's ours, and it's really not. We're just feeling what everybody around us is feeling. So I like to check in and ask that question first, which I think everyone can do. I tend to, with my energetic protection, see myself surrounded by a gold light, my auric field, and just ask that any dents or dings in my auric field be repaired by Archangel Michael. And I see my energy just expand. So you can start by expanding it through your room, out through your home, as big as your neighborhood, and just keep feeling your energy grow. And as it grows, and I see mine as a gold color, and as it grows, just within yourself, have that place of empowerment that anything that no longer serves me, I'm letting you go. And I see it as like it's burning off. So as I grow that gold energy, that anything that's not serving me anymore that I wish to release, I'm just allowing it to burn off as I grow bigger. So that's how I kind of keep the energy in check and make sure that my field around me is protected, but also asking for that clarity and discernment of what's mine and what's not.
So I had a client, we worked on energy, we worked on her past, letting go, and we affirmed in the session that everything that needs to be let go of be disintegrated. The week after, her house burned down. So now I add a word of caution, like in a safe and smooth way, because that was so obvious. It was traumatic for her. She understood that it was a new beginning, but that was because of that session. So I add always now like something after.
Yeah, I usually say with grace and ease. whatever the intention is, with grace and ease. But sometimes, like that fire story reminds me of the Tower card in tarot. And sometimes you have to burn things to the ground in order to actually rebuild it the way that you want to rebuild it. So I don't think that was an accident, right? No. Because now your client gets to redesign how they want it to be. And sometimes the universe is like, you're not doing it, we'll help you. And so I don't think that was necessarily your fault, but I would say with grace and ease.
but it's funny because she retained only a third of her things, and I told her that maybe the rest, every time she saw it, it unconsciously brought her back to her path, and maybe she needed to not see it anymore. But it's very powerful. Where can people contact you if they want a reading, or if they want to work with you on? You can work with you on increasing, like developing your intuition, right, and your psychic abilities.
Yeah, so I have a program where I work with people that want to develop their abilities, but also people that want to start their own businesses, since my background was being a serial entrepreneur. So I definitely tackle a lot of business, marketing, social media with people that want to raise the light, but they don't know how to actually do it from a business perspective. So I have a program that helps with that. But Spirit and Spark, all spelled out, spiritandspark.com is the website, and Spirit and Spark for Facebook and Instagram. And then YouTube is Spirit and Spark TV for those energy updates, those energy forecasts. So everything is Spirit and Spark.
I'll put it in the description, but I was going to ask you about that energy forecast because I'm going to go check it out too. I usually find that these kind of things are very accurate if you are connecting. It's not random, like you said.
Yes, this week's forecast is very stern. The universe wants us to take action, so I would highly suggest it.
Great, great. I guess I must have felt it. I took a lot of action already. So before we conclude, is there something you want to leave the audience with?
I would love to leave a few parting words. I feel that it's important to remind everyone that everything in life is rigged in your favor. And it's a quote that's popularized by Rumi. But everything that's happening is happening for you. And like we've talked about in this interview today, you can choose to see anything that's happening in your life any which way you want. You can see it as a blessing and an opportunity to get stronger, get wiser, to learn lessons you signed up to learn here on the very hard earth school. Yeah. Or you can see it as another validation that I'm a victim, you know? So the choice is yours, and it's just as easy to pick something helpful and happy as it is to be negative and fearful. The choice is yours, and you can't blame anyone else for things that are happening in and around you. Take accountability, take action, and be determined to become that pioneer of your own life.
And it becomes easier anyway when you do that.
Exactly.
Thank you, Dallisa, for being here today with us. That was a fun interview, and you shared very important information. So thank you again.
Yes, thank you for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. And for our listeners, go check Dallisa's forecast, weekly forecast, because we need as much guidance as we can get in those difficult times. It can be beautiful too. So go and make your life better. Bye for now.
Being a single mom can be challenging, but you don't have to face it alone. Join our community at facebook.com/groups/single and doing it all, and receive tools, tips, and free group coaching. And if you like this podcast, please review and rate us on iTunes. I would really appreciate it.